The first thing you notice isn't the siren. It's the silence that comes right before it. You're driving home, nothing unusual, maybe thinking about dinner, maybe just tired from work, and then you see it in the mirror. A flash of red and blue that doesn't feel real for a second. You glance down at your speed. You weren't speeding. Your seatbelt is on. Everything feels normal, but the feeling in your stomach says otherwise. You signal, you pull over, and now the world outside your car feels heavier. The officer steps out, hand resting near the belt. Not aggressive, but not relaxed either. That quiet moment between you and them is where most people start making mistakes without even realizing it. Let me ask you something directly, and I want you to be honest with yourself here. Have you ever been pulled over by police and felt like you were being treated as suspicious, even though you knew you did absolutely nothing wrong? I want you to think about that moment carefully. And if you've experienced it, share what happened in the comments, because the way people respond in these situations varies more than most drivers realize. And there's a reason for that, a reason I'm going to break down for you as we go deeper into this. Because what most people don't understand is this: traffic stops are not just about what you did. A huge part of it is about perception, behavior, timing, and how you respond under pressure. And sometimes, people who haven't done anything wrong still find themselves in situations that escalate far more than they ever expected. You might think the truth is enough to protect you. It isn't always that simple. Let's talk about what really happens during these stops, not the polished version you see in public safety videos, but the real interaction, the psychology behind it, and the mistakes that turn a simple stop into something far more complicated. When an officer pulls someone over, they're not just looking at the vehicle. They're observing everything within seconds. The way you pull over, the speed of your movements, whether you're reaching for something before they approach, whether your hands are visible, whether your eyes avoid contact or lock onto theirs too intensely. These are not random observations. They are part of how officers assess risk in real time. And here's something most drivers never consider. An officer doesn't know your story yet. They don't know if you're coming from work, if you're stressed, if you've had a bad day, or if you're completely innocent. All they have is behavior. And behavior, especially under pressure, can be misread. Now imagine this. You've done nothing wrong. No speeding, no broken lights, no violation you're aware of. Yet you're still being pulled over. The officer approaches and asks the standard opening question. Do you know why I stopped you? This is where things start to shift psychologically. Most people feel compelled to answer. They want to prove innocence immediately. They start guessing. Maybe I was slightly over the line. Maybe my speedometer is off. Maybe I didn't signal early enough. But here's what that does in reality. It introduces uncertainty into the interaction. And uncertainty, in a police officer's mind, sometimes triggers more questioning, not less. Then comes the documents request. License, registration, insurance. You hand them over. Now there's a pause. That pause is important. It feels longer than it is. The officer is checking your documents, your license status, your vehicle record. You're sitting there, waiting, replaying everything in your head. And this is where people often start making subtle mistakes without realizing it. Some become overly talkative, trying to explain themselves. Some become completely silent, thinking silence protects them. Others become visibly nervous, fidgeting, breathing heavily, avoiding eye contact. Each of these reactions is noticed, not because nervousness is a crime, but because officers are trained to interpret behavior in context. A nervous driver might be completely innocent, or they might be hiding something. The officer doesn't know yet, so they continue the interaction. Now here's where things can escalate even when you've done nothing wrong. The officer returns and asks more questions. Where are you coming from? Where are you headed? Have you had anything to drink tonight? That last question surprises a lot of people. They immediately think, why would you ask that if I wasn't driving erratically? But from an officer's perspective, DUI enforcement is one of the most common priorities during stops. Even a completely routine stop can turn into a DUI investigation if certain cues appear. Slurred speech, slow reactions, inconsistent answers, or even the smell of alcohol from a passenger or earlier in the evening can change the direction of the interaction. And here's where a lot of drivers unknowingly make things worse. They over-explain. They start giving detailed timelines of their entire day. They try too hard to prove innocence. Ironically, that sometimes creates suspicion where none existed before. There is a psychological reality here that most people don't talk about. Confidence and calmness matter more than volume of explanation. But calmness under pressure is not natural for most people during a traffic stop. Now let's talk about something that often shocks drivers: being asked to step out of the vehicle even when they did nothing wrong. Legally, in the United States, officers are allowed to ask drivers to step out during a lawful traffic stop. Many drivers assume this means they are under arrest. That's not necessarily true. It can simply be for officer safety or further observation. But in the moment, it feels like escalation. You step out. Now you are outside your controlled environment. Your car is behind you. Your documents are in someone else's hand. The power dynamic shifts in a way most people are not prepared for. The officer may begin observing your body language more closely. They may ask additional questions. Sometimes they'll walk you to the rear of the vehicle so they can see your movements better. At this point, even innocent drivers can start feeling like they are being treated as suspects. And that emotional pressure can cause mistakes like contradicting earlier statements, forgetting details, or responding defensively. And here is something important that many people misunderstand. Officers are trained to notice inconsistencies, not just answers. If you say you left home at 7, then later say 7:30, it may seem small to you. But in a high-pressure environment, inconsistency can lead to deeper questioning. Now consider another scenario that happens more often than people realize: passengers being questioned separately. A driver is calm, cooperative, nothing unusual. But the passenger behaves differently. Maybe they're nervous, maybe defensive, maybe silent. Suddenly, the officer starts focusing more attention on them. This shifts the entire dynamic of the stop. Even if the driver did nothing wrong, the situation becomes more complex because officers are trained to evaluate all occupants of a vehicle as part of a single risk environment. And here's where things can become frustrating for innocent drivers. They may feel like they are being dragged into something they have no control over. But from the officer's standpoint, they are building a complete picture of the situation. Now let's talk about document retention, something drivers often misinterpret. When an officer holds your license and registration longer than expected, many people start feeling anxious. Some even think it's a sign they are about to be arrested. But in reality, officers are often running checks, verifying status, or waiting for confirmation from dispatch. That silence again feels longer than it is. In that moment, drivers often start spiraling mentally, replaying every possible mistake they think they might have made. And here's the truth. This is where most unnecessary escalation begins, not because of wrongdoing, but because of stress reactions that get misread. There is also another layer people rarely think about: consent-based searches. An officer may ask, "Do you mind if I take a look inside your vehicle?" This question sounds casual, but legally it is significant. If you say yes, you are granting permission. If you say no, that is your right. But how you say it matters. Defensive refusal can sometimes increase suspicion, even though you are fully within your rights. This is one of the most misunderstood parts of traffic stops. People think rights exist in isolation, but in real-world interactions, rights exist alongside human interpretation and behavior assessment. Now, I want to address something important here. Many drivers believe that if they are innocent, they can't be arrested. That is not always true in the short term. You can be detained while an investigation is ongoing. You can be temporarily restricted while facts are being verified. And in rare cases, misunderstandings or misinterpretations can lead to arrests that are later resolved. This doesn't mean the system is designed to punish innocent people. It means the system operates under uncertainty in real time. Let's go deeper into officer mindset for a moment, because understanding this changes how you interpret everything that happens during a stop. Officers are constantly balancing two things: risk assessment and procedural accuracy. On one hand, they need to ensure safety. On the other hand, they need to respect legal boundaries and avoid wrongful escalation. So when they ask repeated questions, it is not always about doubting your honesty. It can be about confirming consistency. When they pause before responding, they are often deciding the safest procedural next step. But from your perspective inside the car or standing on the roadside, all you feel is pressure, uncertainty, and the desire for the interaction to end quickly. And that mismatch in perception is where most tension comes from. Let's talk about one of the most stressful experiences a driver can face: being told there is suspicion of something you didn't do. It might be a mistaken vehicle match. It might be a database error. It might be a misunderstanding about registration or insurance. Suddenly, you are being questioned more intensely, even though you know nothing is wrong. This is the moment where emotional control matters more than anything else. Raising your voice, becoming sarcastic, or acting aggressively rarely improves the situation. In fact, it usually extends it. Silence, calm responses, and clear answers tend to de-escalate faster, even when you feel completely wronged. But let's be honest here. That is much easier said than done when you're standing on the side of the road with flashing lights behind you. There is also the issue of time distortion. Traffic stops feel longer than they are. A 5-minute delay feels like 20. A short document check feels like an investigation. That psychological effect causes people to assume escalation where there may be none. And sometimes officers are simply doing their job slowly because they are being cautious. Caution in law enforcement often looks like suspicion from the outside. Now imagine another situation. You did nothing wrong, but your car matches the description of another vehicle involved in an unrelated incident. Suddenly, everything changes. You are being treated with heightened caution, not because of your actions, but because of association. This is one of the most difficult realities for innocent drivers to accept. The system often works on probabilities in real time, not absolute certainty. So where does that leave you as a driver? It leaves you in a space where awareness matters more than assumption. Knowing your rights is important, but so is understanding how behavior is interpreted under stress. Staying calm is not about submission. It is about control of the only thing you fully own in that moment: your reaction. Because here is the truth most people only realize after experiencing it. Traffic stops are not just legal interactions. They are human interactions under pressure. And human interactions are unpredictable, even when no laws are broken. So the next time you hear those lights behind you, or you see that reflection in your mirror, remember this moment of understanding. What happens next is not just about innocence or guilt. It is about perception, communication, and how a few minutes of behavior can shape an entire outcome you didn't expect. And if you've ever been in a situation like this, where everything felt normal, but the stop still felt tense, that experience is worth thinking about more deeply than most people ever do.